Hi everyone, welcome to Studio Classroom on the Air. This is the place to come when you want to have some fun. My name is Rebecca, and I know that your English will improve today. Do you prefer watching the Summer Olympics or the Winter Olympics? Well, do you watch the Olympics at all? Now, yesterday, we learned that some people think that some of the current Olympic sports are a little outdated. As a result, some new sports are being added. We're going to learn more about this in a lesson called New Olympic Sports. Now, here are a few of the sports that may be added. Skateboarding and surfing. Well, friends, I know this is going to be an exciting lesson, so open up your magazines. It's time for us to begin. Let's go.
New Olympic sports. Adding new sports, though, has sparked a lot of debate. Some sports have been pushing to be included in the Olympics for years, but still haven't made it. Meanwhile, newer sports like skateboarding or surfing are already getting the opportunity. People are also wondering what constitutes an Olympic sport. Paris, the future host of the 2024 Summer Olympics, has expressed interest in adding breakdancing. Some people would like to see esports at the Olympics. Esports are especially important to consider because they are spreading like wildfire.
Okay, so we're talking about the Olympics and how it's very possible that the Olympics might be considered outdated, right? So we continue our lesson. Adding new sports, though, has sparked a lot of debate. Some sports have been pushed to be included in the Olympics for years, but still haven't made it.
And before we continue with that thought, let's take a look at a word here in this sentence. It's a word that you already know how to use. In some ways, the word is push.
Right. The word push can be used in many different ways. And here in our lesson, it means forcefully trying to persuade someone to do something. So you're not actually pushing someone with your hands.
That's right. It's not a physical pushing, right? So, for example, you could push for change. Change happens all the time, right? Sometimes a place needs change. If you have a great idea, you could push for change. And we often use the word push with the word for. You're pushing for something to happen. But we could say pushing to do something too. So, for example, here at Studio Classroom, for a long time, we've been pushing to have a music feature here at Studio Classroom.
Exactly. Great example. Well, we continue. Meanwhile, newer sports like skateboarding or surfing are already getting an opportunity. Now, I'm not much of a skateboarder. Are you, Gabe?
I used to have a skateboard when I was a kid. Yeah, I wasn't very good. And, nope, I'm still not very good. I'm not a skateboarder, certainly not, trick skateboarder like this. These guys are incredible.
Yes, and they may possibly appear in the Olympics, right? What about surfer? Are you a surfer?
Surfer.
Like this guy in the picture?
I have surfed before.
Okay.
That does not make me a surfer. No, certainly not a pro like this guy riding these waves. I have tried several times, and it is quite enjoyable. And it's great exercise, Rebecca. Have you done it before?
I have. The summer before I came to Taiwan, a friend of mine and we would get up around 5 in the morning, go down to the beach.
Nice.
Yeah, to surf. Now, let me tell you, I'm not a surfer. I just liked the idea of being on a surfboard and trying to stand up.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. It's a fun thing to try, friends, if you haven't yet. But, okay, so that's skateboarding, surfing, they're getting an opportunity. People are also wondering what constitutes an Olympic sport. That's a good question to ask. What is an Olympic sport anyway? What is involved?
Now, some people are actually pushing to include break dancing. in the Olympics. Yes, now you see a picture of this individual who is break dancing, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to happen yet.
Yeah, and Rebecca is going to demonstrate what this person is doing later in the studio.
That would be really funny and not so funny, actually.
You might break something.
I might break a bone. Yeah, I don't want that happening.
Well, hey, if they're going to add break dancing, then perhaps it will be a possibility in the future for them to add Irish dancing.
Ooh, well, Irish dancing I would love to see in the Olympics, like I mentioned yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if they're not going to add breakdancing or Irish dancing, what about esports? Some people would like to see esports at the Olympics.
Okay, and esports are especially important to consider because they are spreading like wildfire. Let's take a look at that phrase. Pretty picture right there of a fire, but it's kind of dangerous.
And that fire is really spreading quickly. Well, that's exactly what happens when something spreads like wildfire. It means that something quickly affects or becomes known by many people.
Okay, so I often use this phrase in talking about gossip. Or news that is very sensational and people start talking about it. Soon everybody knows it's spreading like wildfire.
Exactly. Great example. And of course, our lesson is talking about how esports are really important to consider for the Olympics because they've become very popular. They are spreading like wildfire.
Okay, well, earlier in our lesson, we did talk about that word push. And there's actually another phrase that we're going to learn about right now with the word push in
the Info Cloud.
Welcome to Info Cloud, friends. There's an expression that we use to say someone is pushing beyond the limits.
We say that they are pushing the envelope. It's a phrase that can be positive or negative depending on the context.
Rex, I've got a confession to make. Growing up, I always thought this phrase was about pushing an actual envelope.
Oh, that's funny. I guess you know now that it comes from mathematics, right?
Yes, but if you dig a little more, you'll find that envelope here refers specifically to what they call a flight envelope.
A flight envelope means that the upper and lower limits of all the factors that make it safe to fly a plane.
This phrase entered common usage in the 1980s when Tom Wolfe published a book about American pilots.
Now, pushing the envelope is all about pushing beyond the limits. Apple is pushing the envelope in terms of smartphone design.
That's a positive example of the phrase, but let's look at one more. Johnny pushed the envelope by demanding his dad buy him an iPhone.
This means the son went beyond what his dad was willing to accept.
You can even use this phrase when someone is asking too much of you by simply saying, "Hey, you're pushing the envelope."
Hey everyone, welcome back to Studio Classroom, where we are talking about new Olympic sports. Now, we already learned in our lesson that surfing and skateboarding may be given an opportunity in the Olympics, but I'm not sure the Olympics is quite ready for breakdancing or esports. But speaking of esports, let's see what President Bach has to say about video games now.
New Olympic sports. Last year, President Bach stated video games with killing are not acceptable. One of the main principles of the Olympics is to encourage world peace. At the moment, the future of esports is still uncertain. What about the Winter Olympics? Not to worry, the IOC has already announced 7 new events for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. But the Winter Olympics situation is a little different. The Winter Olympics has less than half the sports of the Summer Olympics. so it has room to grow.
Now, President Bach has something very important to say about esports. He says, or we read here, last year, President Bach stated video games with killing are not acceptable. Well, that's a relief.
Well, to some people, right? Because a lot of people are probably pretty excited about seeing esports, and a lot of those electronic games, of course, do involve killing of some kind. But we read on here, one of the main principles of the Olympics is to encourage world peace. Okay, so it just does not seem compatible with the Olympics or the goal of the Olympics.
That's right. Now, we want to talk about something that appears in this sentence, and that is the word principle. But we want to compare it to another very similar word, and that's the word principle. So principle spelled with P-L-E, that refers to a basic idea or rule that explains or controls how something happens or works. Now, the other principle that ends with a P-A-L, that just refers to a person who is in charge at a school, among other definitions.
Okay, so let's see how to use that first principle, the word that appears in our lesson. Everybody has some principles in life, right? Maybe they're different from your principles. What are your principles that you like to live by? Perhaps one of your principles is preparation. Preparation is key before doing anything, right? If you're going to give a speech, make sure that you're prepared. Maybe one of your life principles is to think big or to dream big. That means you're not going to be limited by things that other people tell you. What are your life principles? Now, about the other principle, every school has a principal, right? Well, when I was in first grade, I guess I was really naughty because I remember going to the principal's office 7 times. I was sent to see the principal 7 times.
In one day?
No. In first grade, the whole year.
Oh, okay.
In one day.
I got scared for a moment. 7 times in one day would be pretty bad.
Yeah, it is. I wasn't that bad. It was little things like drawing on the desk and cutting in line at the water fountain. I don't know why my teacher couldn't just deal with me herself. But anyway, there it was.
There it was. Now we all know Teacher Gabe has a history of being naughty when he was in first grade.
That's right.
Well, anyway, back to our lesson. You know, we're talking about the word principles of the Olympics, that is. And at the moment, its future is still uncertain. That is the future of the Olympics. What about the Winter Olympics? I know you were all curious about the Winter Olympics.
That's right. Of course, that last session was about the future of esports. Okay, is uncertain. We're not sure what's going to happen. But what about the Winter Olympics? Not to worry, the IOC has already announced 7 new events for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. That's great news for people who might think the Olympics are outdated, for people who might be bored with the Olympics as they are. 7 new sports.
Something to look forward to. But the Winter Olympics situation is a little different. The Winter Olympics has less than half the sports of the Summer Olympics, so it has room to grow. And this is a phrase that we would like to talk about. When you say that something has room to grow, that means that there is space for it to expand. So in this case, we're talking about there's space for more sports.
That's right. There's room to grow. Sometimes we would say in other situations, someone has room for improvement. Okay? So you're learning the language English, and there's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. So the Olympics has room to grow. We have room for improvement. And how can we improve upon our lesson today? What could help bring it to life?
I know. We can watch a review skit.
Thank you.
The 2020 Olympic Games are coming soon. You must be excited.
Oh, what? No, not really. Those games are pretty outdated.
Outdated?
Yeah.
What?
My generation has no interest anymore.
Oh. During recent games, I noticed that younger people weren't there.
Yeah, that's right.
How can the Olympic Committee make the games more youthful?
Well, how about adding some new fun sports?
Oh, it's not that simple. We can't continue to grow bigger and bigger.
Why not?
The host cities can't handle it. I'm afraid that permanently adding a new sport is out of the question.
Hey, why not vote on the program's lineup?
Vote?
Yeah, sure. Give host cities the option to add extra sports.
Extra events for that year's Olympics only. That's a good policy. All right, effective immediately, starting in the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
Okay, if you're going to do that, so skateboarding, sport climbing, surfing, and 3-on-3 basketball. I'd love to see those make an Olympic debut. Youngsters would love that.
Yes, but those sports might spark a big debate.
Huh? What do you mean?
Well, some sports have been pushing to be in the Olympics for years, but still haven't made it. Meanwhile, newer sports all have the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't sound too fair.
And what constitutes an Olympic sport? Breakdancing? E-sports?
Esports, yes, they're spreading like wildfire. Oh, but some of them have killing.
I know, and killing games are not acceptable.
Oh, of course not. Well, hey, I gotta go. Good luck making the games more exciting, though. Okay.
Thanks. Well, I'll see you at the games.
Okay. Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see.
Well, let's say yes for now, and then I'll...
Well, it's been fun talking about the Olympics. Well, that is, new Olympic sports. And only time will tell whether or not breakdancing and esports will make it to the Summer Olympics. But one thing we do know is that the Winter Olympics has added 7 new sports. So you'll have to look out for those new sports. Well, friends, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time right here on Studio Classroom.